shows that the Commonwealth Government are in a white-knuckled panic about national energy policy.
Well, look, the Premier made a $550 million admission of failure.
I've got to say, it is a little galling to be standing here next to a man that's been standing up with his Prime Minister, bagging South Australia at every step of the way.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to mediawatch. And what a remarkable punch-up that was. Last Thursday, South Australian Premier Jay Weatherill barged into Energy Minister Josh Frydenberg's press conference with the clear intention of ambushing him.
Minister, is this all a little bit awkward?
No.
It's about to be.
So, when caught in the spotlight on live TV, how do you react? Frydenberg's answer was, stare into the distance and try to smile, which he did heroically. South Australian Treasurer Tom Koutsantonis had it easier. He grinned smugly and nodded in agreement. But the one we felt for was Andrew Vesey, CEO of energy company AGL, who was expecting a good news announcement. You could almost hear the silent scream, and yet his smile never wavered. And what about Jay Weatherill when the boot was on the other foot? His answer was to look away, look away, look away, and try not to boil over. Yes, it was electrifying stuff, and it had everybody talking.
Press conference yesterday involving Jay Weatherill and Josh Frydenberg is the inspiration for the question of the week this week, which is, what's the most awkward media moment you've had? Now, Christopher, for you and I think the answer to that question is pretty obvious. Take a look at this. Oh, we don't have the grab, which means that that what we were trying to play was that 30 seconds, which is going to make it hard now to do the joke we're going to do.
This is now the most awkward moment.
This is now the most awkward moment.
Ha! Meanwhile, of course, the energy standoff continues. And you can see why we have one, because our politicians are too busy posturing to agree on anything. But don't just blame them, because you won't find measured debate in the media either. South Australia's plan has some interesting ideas, like battery storage and royalties for farmers to encourage gas production. But the Australians' army of columnists lavished it with scorn as misplaced, too late, too expensive, too complicated, and a problem we should never have had in the first place. While the Weekend Australian's former editor, Nick Cater, who now runs the Menzies Centre, bizarrely blamed it all on global warming science, which he said offered intellectuals
an opportunity to settle old scores by refighting the lost battle of the Cold War, the fight against free markets.
Yes, Cater continued,
there are certainly parallels. Marxism, according to Friedrich Engels, was scientific socialism.
For the record, I am not a communist and I believe in free markets, but I reckon renewable energy is an essential part of the future. It surely is time the Australian got used to it. But Nick Cater's not the only one crying danger, because Today Tonight in Adelaide told us recently that green and clean is wrecking the planet.
Now to the green energy myth. You might think you're helping the planet by supporting wind power and driving a hybrid or electric car. But as Hendrik Gout reports, there can be a terrible price to pay.
Clean, green, renewable is dirty, poisonous, deadly. Because what you don't know is that making these green, eco-friendly, non-polluting, sustainable wind turbines means making this, a lake so toxic, so deadly, a vast cauldron of acids, chemicals and radioactive tailings.
Oh dear, sounds horrible and scary. And even though Today Tonight admitted that what they call rare earths are used in lots of high-tech products, there was no doubt which one it saw as the villain.
They're used by the tens of tons to generate wind power, turned into the permanent magnets for fitment into the towers. A 3-megawatt turbine uses 2 tons of rare earths. So in China,
There is an awful lot of environmental damage.
So, is this right? Well, for a start, it's an 8-year-old story. Some of the footage of those toxic lakes that TT relied on was shot in 2009 by Britain's Channel 4, which Today Tonight lifted off the internet, complete with interviews, without payment or permission. Naughty, naughty. But more to the point, according to Channel 4's Lindsay Hilsum, TT beat up the story.
Our story was responsible, pointing out the issues around rare earths, which were not widely known at that time, without demonising the renewables industry. This is a retread, seemingly without nuance or updating.
Also not impressed with Today Tonight's story were two Australian interviewees whom TT relied on to make its case. Dr Nigel Cook, a geologist from the University of Adelaide, claimed he didn't know it would focus on wind power. And he added,
"This just seemed to be extremely negative. Certainly it's not reflecting our points of view."
And South Australian Greens leader Mark Parnell, who also appeared in the report, was even blunter, telling MediaWatch,
"In total, the story was a complete beat-up."
And why is that? Well, for starters, rare earths are used in just about every electronic product we rely on, like mobile phones, computers, TV screens and cars. And more than half of rare earths exported to the US are used in catalysts to make petrol. But as Parnell points out, that wasn't the story TT wanted to tell.
The emphasis was not to make people feel bad about using mobile phones or watching TV. It was to make people feel bad about using renewable energy. So it wasn't a balanced story at all.
But the key problem is the programme was factually wrong. Most wind turbines in Australia do not use rare earth magnets in their turbines because they're too expensive. We've looked at the specs of all the turbines in Australia, and on our count, fewer than 1 in 5 use rare earths, with none in Tasmania, only 1 in 12 in Western Australia, and only 1 in 5 in South Australia, where Today Tonight and Hendrik Gout are based. So, how did TT get it so wrong? We suspect because they wanted the facts to fit their story, and because they didn't take the time to check. Hendrik Gout told us,
"This wasn't an easy story on an important topic. Few people know what rare earths are and don't know its many uses. Illustrating the point with turbines in South Australia was an apt way of illustrating their application."
And he added,
"If 1/5 use rare earth magnets, that's a lot."
Well, actually, it's not, because it means 4 out of 5 do not. And so TT's claim that renewable energy equals dirty, poisonous and deadly is just plain wrong. But now to Channel 9 Sydney and a heartwarming story about the man who's going to make Gosford great again.
With a bit of hard work and plenty of Aussie charm, John Singleton has found success in radio, horse racing and business, amassing a multi-million-dollar fortune along the way. Now, Singo is trying on a new hat, that of developer, and tells us he's taking a big risk to give his beloved Central Coast a much-needed boost.
Yes, Singo has put on his hard hat to spruce up the main street of good old Gosford by putting up
a $35 million 13-storey residential and commercial development.
And with 51 apartments to sell, it's lucky 9 News was there to produce a PR puff for the new development and its owner.
John Singleton has many loves in life.
This is Weet-Bix time.
His birds.
Whoa! But they come home to you every night?
Every night.
And the Central Coast are just 2 of them.
But even better for Singo than a TV ad masquerading as news is the fact that as part owner of Macquarie Media, he has an entire radio network at his disposal, with top-rating presenters like 2GB's Ray Hadley only too happy to spruik their boss's business.
He's provided me with what we call a live read today for a brand new development.
And Ray wasn't just going to stick to the script when the opportunity on offer was as hot as this.
Having gone up there, I said to him, Singo, it will sell itself. But if I wasn't a single father on a fixed income, I'd probably buy one.
Day after day, Ray has been at it, on one occasion for 7 long minutes. But competing for the boss's love, 2GB Drive host Ben Fordham went even further.
Now, I take a keen interest in real estate, and I've got no doubt Benithan Tower is going to be one of the hottest property opportunities of 2017. It's a winner. You can thank me later for tipping you into it.
Yes, 2GB listeners have been getting a direct line to Singo's deal of the century as his mates have conducted a virtual auction of the properties on air.
I'm very happy to say that the phones have been ringing off the hook regarding Benithan Tower at Gosford. I mean, the 2 penthouses are gone. What's that? So 11 out of the 51 are gone, so there's 40 left.
And there was plenty of upside for potential buyers apart from the resale value, with Ray suggesting,
I was thinking, what we should do is, as a bonus for the first 25 people to put deposits down, will get an autograph photo of Singo.
Ah, and Ben going one better.
I'll be inviting myself to your place once you've moved in, and I'll join you and your family and friends for a beer on the balcony, watching the sun go down over the water. I'm serious.
It really does beggar belief. The Cash for Comments scandal almost 20 years ago was about paid advertisements masquerading as editorial, yet this appears to be quite similar. First, because those gushing personal endorsements go way beyond a normal 30-second live read, and second, because most contained no disclosure that they were commercials. And 2GB has confirmed to us that they were. So, is that okay? Well, remarkably, the radio code does not require disclosure if the pitch is
clearly identifiable to a reasonable listener as an advertisement.
So here is the key question. Was it obvious that Ray, Ben or 2GB were being paid to wax lyrical, or were they freely offering their opinion that this is a great investment, despite recent warnings from the Reserve Bank that apartment prices could collapse? Fordham told listeners,
I'm more than happy to represent this project and to endorse it because I think it's a winner. And I think there are a lot of people who are going to do very well out of it.
We hope he's right. As for the cost of it all, we counted 61 minutes of boosting from Ben and Ray, which Media Monitor iSentia reckons should add up to around $125,000. How much Singo paid, 2GB wouldn't tell us. But now, let's switch to one of our favourite shows, Sky's Outsiders, with Mark Latham, Ross Cameron and Rowan Dean, which last Sunday opened up with a bang and a bump and not much else.
Live from the Sky News Centre, this is Outsiders.
Current affairs show.
Something of a metaphor there, perhaps? Hello? We can't hear you. Yes, the show with three old white men on the panel, and I speak as one myself, gets an audience of only 31,000 people each week. But host Mark Latham likes to boast they're in touch with real Australia.
Of course, we're the absolute antithesis of ABC insiders, where you get a bunch of overpaid journalistic elites sitting around on the couch agreeing with each other.
These guys also do it, but sitting at a desk, generally attacking political correctness, at which co-host Ross Cameron famously excels.
Sky News presenters in civil war over Ross Cameron.
But last week, Mark Latham also came under fire from fellow Sky host Peter Van Onselen, suggesting that civil war may be flaring again.
In politics, Latham asked media to leave his family alone. Now uses his Sky show to attack a colleague's wife. Nothing too low. Ross Cameron?
So, what could he be referring to? Well, having watched last week's programme, we think it must be this.
The other thing we've got for you viewers is, by viewer request, we had so much feedback about the G&I mob, diversity and inclusion, the D&I mob. So we've gone to the trouble of identifying some of the people campaigning in corporate and government Australia for diversity, and I'm going to bring them up here. We call them the Diversity Bunch.
Yes, the Diversity Bunch. And first for a spanking was that colleague's wife, Ainsley Van Onselen.
You've got at the top left Ainsley Van Onselen, who's been at Westpac pushing diversity, giving the gongs out to the rich and privileged women.
Singling out Van Onselen's wife for ridicule was never likely to go unremarked. And sure enough, 2 days later, Peter Van Onselen and Christina Keneally fired back on air with some ridicule of their own.
Kind of like the Outsiders. You reckon that name works? Does that name work?
Oh, that's actually not a bad point. Yeah, you're not really an outsider if you're living off the teat of the public via an antiquated pension system when you attack entitlements on a daily basis as part of your shtick because you're an outsider. That represents...
That's extremely outside,
and I don't wish to envelop Rowan Dean in that because he's the one member of the three who doesn't live off the public teat on an antiquated, out-of-date, publicly loathed entitlement scheme, which they now rail against, ironically. It's just hypocrisy on stilts.
Van Onselen's pointing out that Latham and Cameron both receive lavish and lifelong parliamentary pensions, on our calculations more than $100,000 a year apiece, which of course is paid by you and me, the taxpayer. And a footnote, PVO's wife actually left that job in November, so they got their facts wrong too. They've now taken her out of the Diversity Bunch, or the Blonde Sheilas, as they call them, but not apologised. And you can read more about tonight's stories on our Facebook page or our website, where you can read a response from Today Tonight, get a transcript and download the programme. You can also catch up with us on iView and contact me or MediaWatch on Twitter. And don't miss Media Bites every Thursday on Facebook, Twitter and our website, and also on iView. But for now, until next week, that's all from us. Goodbye.